Mexico is expressing disappointment with Canada over its latest move to protect the steel industry here. Yesterday, the Canadian government imposed a 25% tariff on 7 types of steel imports. Its aim, the government says, at preventing Canada from becoming a dumping ground after the U.S. imposed its own tariffs on steel imports. Mexico is partially exempt, but the country is still unhappy and says it will consider challenging the tariffs. It's also considering countermeasures. So how is Mexico likely to respond? Joining me now is Agustin Barrios Gomez. He's a founding member of the Mexican Council on Foreign Relations and a former federal deputy in the Mexican Congress. We've reached him by Skype from Mexico City. Hi, Mr. Barrios Gomez. Nice to see you again.
Likewise, Ash.
Okay, tell me first how the news of these tariffs, or these retaliatory tariffs, whatever you want, safeguards, however they're being termed, was received in Mexico.
So it did make the front page of the Reforma newspaper, which is the #1 circulation. I think the #1 thing is that, you know, there's this concept of I thought we were friends kind of thing. But at the same time, the response, if you actually see the response on behalf of the economy ministry, it's pretty boilerplate. You know, we're shocked, and we're going to take this to the WTO, and we're going to take this to the NAFTA conflict resolution panel and all that. So even though it's not something that people like, and especially free traders here in Mexico, because the outgoing administration wants to sort of wrap it up, the incoming administration doesn't want to deal with any of these issues because they feel they've got enough on their plate. So you'll see a standard reaction, but I don't think it's going to escalate.
On the topic of I thought we were friends, I'll ask you more about that reaction, but I'm pretty sure the Canadian government was thinking that as well prior to the Mexican government saying they're going to go they're prepared to go ahead bilaterally with the U.S.
Well, I mean, you have to understand, this actually did begin with Canada, right? And so there were issues that were not being resolved. The Mexicans had very specific issues with our calendar. Our outgoing administration is a free trading administration. The incoming administration, they're even though they pay lip service to free trade, and I don't think they're going to do anything rash on that front, they are not ideologically aligned with that. So there were big red lights saying that we really had to move forward, because we could have put ourselves and Canada and in the U.S. in a difficult situation if this had gone beyond the 1st of December, which is when the new president takes power. So those political considerations, I think, were very, very important on this end.
Do you think they drove basically what Mexico agreed to in the end?
Absolutely. Yeah, they totally did. They had to, because, like I said, the outgoing administration wanted to put its signature on it for legacy reasons, definitely, but also, you know, they were also they were in cahoots or in line or in perfect communication and perfect coordination with the incoming administration. The incoming administration has its base, and its base is not a free trading base, and so the incoming administration, the pragmatic side, which is what 101 at the end of the day, basically saying, guys, do not leave this on my plate, because I don't want to be having to explain all of this stuff to people who really don't like free trade and don't like North America.
Do you foresee the issue of these tariffs and more the safeguards, but more largely the application of tariffs and counter tariffs, driving a wedge between Mexico and Canada?
I think for the moment, I don't think it's a real concern. Like I said, it's the shocked, I say, the sort of reaction, boilerplate, let's take it to the WTO, let's take it to NAFTA resolution. You're talking about maybe about $200 million. It's like steel rods and tubing for that's very specialized for the oil industry. So it's not really a big deal. Our trading relationships is over $30-40 billion, depending on how you calculate it, even $50 billion, depending on how you calculate it. So it's not really a big deal. But the issue would be, you know, tit for tat. When tit for tat becomes snowballs and becomes a big issue, that's sort of what you want to be looking for. And also the fact that Canada has fired the first salvo after the USMCA welcome party, so to speak.
It's kind of all of a product, though, of what the U.S. instigated by first leveling the 232 tariffs. And I remember President Trump's press conference just a few days before the new NAFTA was signed, and he was really, or maybe actually the day, and he was he was heralding the use of those tariffs as a bargaining chip and really expressing that he had no regret over using them. Do you think that these are here to stay, and this type of the relationship and the actions that it's generated might be as well?
Well, I mean, yes, I think the bottom line with what you just said is that this is all Donald Trump's fault, and of course it is the American voters' fault. I mean, the American voter has hoisted this gentleman on the world, and we have to deal with him, even when it makes absolutely no sense. So more than Mexico and Canada, this is very much an American issue. And I understand that the Canadian government wasn't going to single out the United States very specifically, but I also understand that that is why they did it. And I think Mexican officials understand that too, which is one of the reasons why the reaction is fairly muted.
But does the president have a point? I mean, he's saying that he used these tariffs as leverage, that we, on the day NAFTA was signed, new NAFTA was signed, we wouldn't have been there without those tariffs. Does he have a point?
No, I don't think so. I think that the trading relationship is much, much bigger. I mean, he had us at the table because it is, at the end of the day, the number one trading partner for both countries. It is the superpower, and basically he was acting like a bully, and that's why we were there. And I think that he might have thought that that was a big deal. At the end of the day, the concessions that were wrought were the best possible answer to a very difficult question, because the question itself is flawed. It's based on flawed assumptions. Lighthizer and the trading and the entire team of President Donald Trump really don't believe in free trade, and so their assumptions were incorrect to begin with. And I think Canada and Mexico did a good job given those circumstances.
Do you think they sort of mitigated the damage as best they could? Because there's a lot of talk here, for example, that our former Prime Minister Harper was saying that the U.S. got a good deal. We essentially, and I'm paraphrasing, we got a deal. There's a lot of people here saying that we gave up stuff, but we didn't lose given the context.
It could have been a lot worse. I mean, at the end, to be debating about dairy on the Canadian end and on our end, you know, these sort of restrictions on $16 per hour wages for manufacturing certain parts of cars, you know, it's certainly managed. It goes in the way of managed trade, which we don't believe in. Nevertheless, I think it could have been a lot worse. I mean, you had, you know, Chapter 19, conflict resolution. You had the sudden death after 5 years. Those things are gone, thank God.
For sure. All right. Thanks so much, Mr. Barrios Gomez. Nice to see you again.
Likewise.